right. I think I have you back. I have you on, Tim, but I think you have to relaunch the chat because actually, uh, my crashed, my Google crashed, so it actually took us off the air, and I had to do, so it's basically there's another episode. So I think if anybody was, I don't think anybody else was in the chat with us anyway, so we didn't lose them on the chat. But if anybody listened to that previous show, they would get cut off and maybe not know there's essentially a second show now for today because I just restarted it.
So do I need to relaunch it too?
Yeah, you need to relaunch it too. Sorry. So, I didn't know that. So we were missing you for the lot of great commentary.
Oh,
doggone it.
Not good, yeah.
Yeah, you'll have to come back. That would be great. So,
I'm in it.
Okay,
Yes.
I think that I can see you jumping on the board when you talk now, Tim, so I'm almost positive we have you. I don't know what actually was the issue. I don't know what I changed, but it's working now, so.
Well, okay, I think in regards to this topic, and my original topic for the show that I thought I wanted to do was Defending the Undefendable, because I read that book by Walter Block, and maybe we will get to that eventually, but I think we sort of got to it here, because this is some of that. It is, I think it gets really misunderstood. If you defend the right of someone to make this 50 Shades movie or to produce the Sports Illustrated cover and you don't say it shouldn't be banned, people should be free to do it, you get misunderstood as believing that, hey, anything goes, and I just think, that's all fine and people can do whatever they want. Well, I have opinions about morality. I have beliefs about those things and things that I think people should and shouldn't do, but I won't make exceptions for freedom. I won't make exceptions and use force against people to stop them from doing something, just for the reason that Tim just said, that I don't want to be controlled by other people. I don't want to be forced, and so I don't want to force them. So if I want my local store to not carry something that I feel is pornographic, that I don't want my children to see, I have to use other forms of influence than force. So I can't go to the government. I have to say, I can write a letter, I can leave the store, I can shop somewhere else, I can do all kinds of things, but I can't use force against them. No exceptions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good point. And I think, part of it, only a part of it, boils down to you have to think for yourself, right? And make your own decisions, make your own moral case for what you think is right.
Very true. And that was something that's my frustration, because I'm a Christian as well, and in the church it was really hard to question a lot of those things about using force against people, and it's hard. There's a lot of different opinions, and you have to think for yourself, and that's not always encouraged within the church. It's not encouraged within the society. It's something that tends to go against the grain, but we have to do it if we want to. I mean, if we care about morality, we have to think about these things. You can't just do what someone else tells you to do.
All right. Do we cover that? Do we want to move on and do
so.
the Uber thing?
Did I defend myself well enough for bringing up the inappropriate topics?
I like those topics just because of the angle. I think is very interesting. It raises some new issues when you think of it that way, and I think obviously most people don't really consider that when they're thinking of going to see the movie 50 Shades of Grey.
I was actually just trying to bring up sensational topics to get more listeners
more
to the show. Do you think it worked?
Oh, yeah.
There's one more.
Wait, after I screwed up the technical part and
Yeah.
Tim wasn't on for the first part, now it's divvied into two shows that people are going to know it's a mess
Right.
now. But anyway, I guess I better say, you're listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show in case you didn't know because
Okay.
it got messed up. So, this Uber thing I think is kind of interesting. And we, again, talked about it last week. And, the basic story last week was we went through the case. There was, I'm going to use terrorism, my air quotes, attack in Sydney. It was just some crazy guy who put out the ISIS flag or whatever, right? Anyway, the bottom line is Uber, on the corporate level, I don't know if that's the right description, they basically bump up the price, and apparently they bumped it up like 4 times. What do you oh, shoot. Yeah, we want to get Tim's level up.
Okay, Tim said we can barely hear him, so...
Okay, I'm gonna mess with that. You never know. I might wind up. Actually, I don't think I cut off the show last time. I know my Google just quit. So let me see if I can get back in there, and I'll play with that while I'm talking. But the point was, in order to attract more drivers, bring them into this downtown section, the Central Business District, I think is what it's called. Uber bumped up the rates by a factor of 4, and of course, I believe, and I don't know this for the drivers, then get a factor of 4 what their normal cut is.
When I talked to somebody today who didn't know what Uber was, so you might want to kind of explain.
Will you explain that then?
Bit. Well, I've never used Uber before, but it's basically a ride sharing or kind of like a taxi service. Only it's private individuals using their cars, right? They get kind of. Don't work for Uber. I think they're independent contractors, but the theory is that they use their cars during their downtime to go and give rides to people for money, right?
Yes.
Did I explain it well enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have actually used it, and it works great, by the way. I think my wife used it in Brooklyn one time. They went to a concert with she went to a concert with my son and his girlfriend, and they... everybody's waiting for a taxi, right? And boatloads of people. And he Ubered ahead of time. It's an app on your phone.
Yeah, it's an app. So.
And you get the, again, I'm not the guy using it, but you get the price and you put in your route or where you want to get picked up and where you want to go to. It gives you a price for it and you accept or deny. If you hit accept, you can actually kind of track the car, the driver. So you go, oh, he's, 4 blocks away. He's coming down this street or whatever. And the point is, everybody's waiting for a cab and his car pulls up, picks them up, gone. So it's really cool.
And they use the surge pricing because it increases the supply during times of higher demand.
Yes, that's the point. And again, people were on that hey, they should be like a public service and help people out. Well, I can't make that decision for them. They just do that when they want, and when they don't want to, they shouldn't.
Well, you guys talked about the Sydney thing where there was some hostage threat in Sydney, right?
Yeah.
Where people complained because they charged high prices. But I would say that they did actually, that was a public service because they charged high prices, which guaranteed that they had a high supply of
drivers,
people to evacuate people out of there by incentivizing their drivers to get there quickly so they could make more money. They did provide a public service. The market provides a public service.
And I think it's fantastic that, and my brother brought this up. He says, would you rather have no rides at the normal rate,
right,
or one ride out? I think he said 10 times the rate last week, and that's the point. And it's the same thing of the Hurricane Katrina deal, right? When they were raising the price of gas, the motel rooms. I remember the motel room one. Walter Williams wrote an article about it, and he's, it gets people to economize. Maybe a family of 5 might take 2 rooms.
Well, that was another great point that you brought up about everyone like cramming into one car or cramming into one hotel room during times of higher pricing. That increases the supply available even more.
Yes.
When people economize, then they kind of crunch in there. And so all of that is serving to serve the market well and meet the needs of the people in the market. And it's actually the prices that are doing it.
So a slightly different take is this article that's entitled "It's Already Over and Uber Has Won." This is by Johanna Bouillon, I think is how you pronounce her name. She's a BuzzFeed News reporter.
Article.
Yeah, and that was from its articles from February 20th. And I don't, Tim, you're familiar with this article. I mean, very familiar, right? Give the basic rundown, if you would, or give an angle that you think it is appropriate for it. Well, I also find it interesting that, and I do believe, at least the times I've used this service, I thought it was very convenient, and obviously it gives you the option to accept or deny based on the price, and I pressed accept, so I must have felt it was a good deal, otherwise I wouldn't hit accept, right? But this article also points, I think, or emphasizes, maybe is the word, to some perceived abuses by Uber, right? They're abusing their drivers where they really should be employees, some people allege. I'm not saying...
a class action lawsuit,
yeah.
I think. But they're responding to those things. It said in the article that they are trying to improve the complaints that the drivers have, trying to always improve the experience for the drivers, and they're just very, very responsive to... Their market is kind of, I mean, it's the people who are using the rides, but it's also attracting the people who want to use their private cars to be drivers.
Right.
You know, isn't that kind of, I mean, it's sort of a part of their market, isn't it? They're independent contractors, so it's kind of like you have to have people want to participate in this.
You know, it's just, here's a company, and by all rights, what the valuation is, $40 billion, according to this on February 20th. Again, if this is accurate from this reporter, but the market capitalization here is worth a little bit more than Fiat, Chrysler, and the Gap combined. So I think part of the argument, well, they're overvalued. Well, let the market determine that. I don't personally see that as a problem. Now, I might agree that it's overvalued, or I might disagree that it's overvalued. But so what, right? You know, it's like, I don't know, you want to sell me a tennis shoe, and you tell me $600 for the tennis shoe. I might go, yeah, that's a little too rich for my blood. I'm not going to buy it. You know, big deal. So I think that's one thing that this article pointed to. And then, you know, again, some perceived abuses. Instead of saying, hey, here's a new alternative to the I don't know, $1 million emblem, what do they call it? That you
Medallions.
Medallions. Yeah, on a taxi in New York, which had a lock on the fares, right? You couldn't get any more medallions in New York.
Wouldn't you say Uber has pretty much broken a monopoly?
Yes.
I mean that's kind of cool, I think,
right?
to do that.
So my point is, I would argue overall, this is a wild free market success. And again, obviously, the free market has many detractors. A lot of people who openly poo-poo it right off the get-go. But
I don't know. People really like Uber. They said 55% of the U.S. population
has used it,
I believe. So that's big.
Yeah, that is big. But, you know, again, they poo-pooed them because of the Sydney thing. They're poo-pooing them because they're overvalued, that they may have abused. And Yeah, I think a lot of people, when we talk about this, they'll say, well, you guys are just, asserting that Uber is a bunch of angels. Well, I'm not asserting that either. I mean, I don't know any of these guys personally. All I know is what I read. But again, every attempt to create something new, innovate is the word I guess I'm looking for. Provide a new service or provide it in a new way, a cheaper way, a better way, a faster way, whatever the consumer demands, and it is time to break a monopoly, essentially. That's a good thing. Anything good for the consumer, I favor that.
Well, and it sounds like they just began operating. They didn't ask for permission.
I
They
like
just
that.
did it.
Yeah.
And they did it and did it well. It became really popular. And then when the state started to fight them, and the taxi drivers who are kind of in conjunction with the state because of the medallions, there are certain licenses they have and everything, they had cease and desist orders against them in different areas, and they just ignored it. And then I think in multiple cases they had signatures from people, I think, for like, I don't know how many people, there really was, it was so popular that legislators they just really couldn't squash them. So I thought it was a really interesting story, what happened there.
Yes.
I don't know how big they were able to go in or exactly how. I find it fascinating. I'm curious, how were they able to do that and do it big enough and fast enough to not get completely shut down? They said that they just kind of caught everybody off guard. They just went in and started operating.
And let me point out just one other thing, that Uber does have competition. Now, the old taxis, a competitor of theirs, but then there's Lyft. Sidecar, and there's something, Get. I don't know if they're only in San Francisco or whatever, but there's a number of competitors and that have at least a somewhat similar model.
But they even benefit their competitors because by fighting the state and they've gotten a lot of laws changed, because basically the state just couldn't really, they had to back down because they were so popular, and now they've opened up the field for competitors too.
Right.
Because then, the laws are changed, and so there's freedom then to compete against them.
I just am always freaked out by the people objecting to the free market, and again, I think most people just see it, they lack economic knowledge, right? They don't understand the framework. So I think they just more from the mindset, I would just like you to provide your service to me for free. And I'd like a really good service for free. I just don't want that crappy service. I want the good stuff, and I want it right. And until they get that, they're not going to really be satisfied. But they don't understand that, the free market is just a summary of voluntary exchanges. Being that voluntary, they wouldn't be made unless each side believed or perceived that they would benefit from the exchange.
Well, this was interesting. These drivers are completely voluntary, so no one's compelling them to go anywhere saying, oh, you're going to get fired if you don't go. So let's say like a big concert lets out and there's tons of people needing rides. Well, the price will go up because isn't that just sort of like a logarithm or something that it just sort of automatically sets the price to a higher price because it senses that there's a surge going on in this area. So, there's this big concert, everybody needs a ride. It motivates these drivers to voluntarily go, hey, there's more money to be made in this part of town, and then they go there, so then you have this supply. I think that's just amazing. I think that's just a really cool thing that, how can anybody complain about that? I don't understand. I guess I really don't understand economics.
It's the same reason why snow cone trucks do really well in July and do horribly in December.
Perfect. That's it.
Very good point.
Nice.
Hey, but they did that reminded me that Uber did some kind of like ice cream truck promotion where you could like Uber an ice cream truck.
I didn't know that.
I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know where they did that, but I read that somewhere.
Oh, okay. So, do we want to move on to the sniper theology, or do we want to do that another time? It's up to you guys, because I messed up the show. But,
Well, Tim will probably like that one. It's what we were talking about. Some of this, it gets into some of these theological isties for us, and
I thought it was a great
that's
issue,
big,
especially with you two.
Yeah, it trips my trigger
Okay.
also.
You get it? You read this one, did you not, Tim?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I thought this was really cool because I'm not really going to give the backdrop to this article. I'll let you guys do that in your discussion, but I'm just going to give a broader backdrop. I'm always when the whole thing about patriotism and honor the troops or support the troops deal, right, comes up. I always think of this Thomas Woods. I don't know if you listened to his podcast. He had a podcast where he basically, I'll set the stage quickly. He was on an airplane and a bunch of vets came on board and everybody applauds and everything. And, you know, on his podcast he's talking about, I'm supposed to applaud these guys even though, A, I oppose the war because I believe the war is unjust / immoral, right? So, and if you do believe that, well, then once you believe what these guys are doing is immoral and unjust, so I can't applaud them, right? Well, then when I don't applaud them, everybody looks at me like, what the heck's the matter with you? Are you un-American, blah, blah, you know, how that all goes.
Well, what are you supposed to do then? You're on the
So,
spot.
so this is the same basic thing to me that, this is an article that was on LouRockwell.com today entitled Sniper Theology by Lawrence Vance. And I think he did another great job of going through, you know, just the morality of what's going on and about the sniper. And I think it's obviously a hot topic with the sniper movie and the sniper trial, I believe right there in Texas, Tim.
Another movie I haven't seen,
Yeah.
but I've heard about.
Did they actually do the trial today? I know yesterday it was postponed because of the weather. I don't know if it will resume today or not. Did you hear, Tim? Okay. Yeah, it's happening right in somewhere around Dallas. I know it is. Because he was shot, like, right near there, too, somewhere, right? I can't remember the sniper's name. Anyway, so the article. Tanya, you read this one, too, right? If you want to give a little backdrop there. Because I like to have you guys do this because there's a biblical angle to this raised in the article, and it points to some of the, I don't know, contradictions that Tim laid out a little earlier that, you know, and I think again in that sense it's kind of the same. So
I like Lawrence Vance, but he's talking about this guy who's trying to give this balanced biblical view of the sniper.
Right.
And I don't even know if I want to get started on this. I would say this is everything that I used to be, and so it's a really touchy subject for me. I'm still a Christian, but I have really changed my views on a lot of these things, and so this is very sensitive for me because so many of my friends and people that I care about still believe this way, so it's a difficult one for me. But I just read this very quickly. I didn't see this until I got here tonight, but this Rick Phillips, I think I've read his stuff before. He writes for some like Reformed things and evangelicals and stuff, and about Christians should praise snipers, and that the New Testament, this is what always gets rolled out, that it's a Christian's duty to be subject to the governing authorities, that Jesus fulfilled his duties to the secular authorities, that we should praise and thank our faithful warriors, these snipers, but look forward to the day when there will be no snipers, just as there will be no terrorist armies. So I guess that's kind of the gist of it, and then Lawrence Vance comes back with his defense.
Yeah, you guys want to go over those, the whole thing, because he's got a long list of them, right?
So that's supposed to be the balanced biblical view. We're supposed to, submit to the governing authorities, and, so that's like, this is all okay. All right, where's the beginning of his thing here?
Hey, I'm not paying attention right now. I'm in the chat room.
I know, I'm trying to read. I just read it. Hey, I would have had notes on this if I would have had it ahead.
I'm a guy. I can't do two things at once.
Okay, I'm multitasking. I can do this. I'm a girl. Sniper theology considers all American wars to be just and all American snipers to be justified. Sniper theology views all U.S. soldiers as heroes, but especially snipers. Sniper theology leads Americans to display bumper stickers reading, "God bless our troops, especially our snipers." Yikes. Sniper theology glorifies long-distance murder as long as it is committed by American snipers. So this is, I'll get to his defense, I guess. There's more here where he talks about all this sniper theology. Well, isn't there, okay, I guess I'll kind of read through this. Sorry, not very prepared here.
Yeah.
Where was I at? Sniper theology thinks American snipers committing evil are defending us from evil. Sniper theology considers it the duty of American snipers to kill whomever the current occupant of the White House says to kill. Sniper theology believes that the more people American snipers kill, the better the sniper. Sniper theology pleads falsely that American snipers kill in self-defense, even though they are the invaders and occupiers. Sniper theology ignores what American snipers say about killing because they enjoy it. Sniper theology considers the killing of women and children by American snipers to be necessary. Sniper theology condemns as cowardly the killing of U.S. soldiers by snipers from other countries. So it's cowardly if another country does it. Sniper theology denies that American snipers who get killed reap what they sow. Sniper theology feels that foreigners who resist U.S. invasions and occupations deserve to be killed by American snipers. Sniper theology denies that American snipers are merely government costume killers. Sniper theology supposes that Jesus will tell American snipers, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant, for dispatching another jihadist to the lake of fire." Sniper theology violates the first commandment when it encourages the hero worship of American snipers. Sniper theology says that the sixth commandment prohibition against killing doesn't apply to American snipers. Sniper theology has an unholy desire to legitimize American snipers killing in unjust wars. Sniper theology accepts without reservation whomever the U.S. government designates as the enemy. Sniper theology applauds movies about American snipers even though they are laced with gore and profanity. Sniper theology deems it a great thing when Christian young people surrender to join the U.S. military to become a sniper. Sniper theology thinks that American snipers who kill in U.S. wars of aggression are heroes instead of murderers. He wraps it up with "Cursed be sniper theology. This unholy, anti-biblical heresy is pervasive in too many American churches. Stamp it out wherever and whenever you can."
Yeah.
That's Lawrence Vance, who is a Christian and just gives a really great defense on these kinds of issues. He's on Lou Rockwell and different things, but yeah, he's good.
Yeah, there were so many good ones in there. I like sniper theology has an unholy desire to legitimize American snipers killing in unjust wars. And again, I think people need to think about that. If the war is unjust, and you, actually what you think you're defending freedom, as most people in the U.S. think, what if, just suppose for a moment that you're wrong and you're actually the aggressor, right? And you made an error in your judgment and you're actually the aggressor. Now, is the sniper, is he still okay? And that's what Tanya and I talked about. Why? Because part of the sniper theology is, well, basically, if the state says they're the bad guys, then by definition, they're the bad guys.
So are you supposedly off the hook because you were submitting to the governing authorities because you worked for them and they told you to kill, even though it was unjust?
Right.
I don't think, as far as my faith does not let me off the hook for that. So I guess if you hold to this type of theology, then that's where you stand.
Yeah, I think that's just a very interesting thing. And again, I got sidetracked because I'm chatting with Uncle Ghoulie right now. And hey, thanks for joining us in the chat. By the way, it's actually very fun to have that conversation.
All kinds of stuff going on in there.
Yeah, and
I
again,
wasn't multitasking that much.
and me being a male, of course, I just struggle to do two things at once. I just can't do that. But we welcome to join. We got on a messed up show tonight because we got my my browser died on us, so we got back on the air. But we're always on the air at 7:00 Central every Tuesday. So if you're listening out there, please keep that in mind. Also, we have the Facebook page, and we usually put the link there, so you can always just link through to the show there on the Facebook page. I don't know, Tim. I know you were in there in the chat room.
I know he's still chatting on the previous topic, which
no.
I get. We do that in the chat room, but
See,
I don't know if Tim wants to respond to this. I'd love to hear his response.
People don't. Go ahead, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I would just say, I'm kind of puzzled to hear what the fascination is with specifically this sniper. I would just say, in general, to form a theology around an American soldier, not just any soldier, but an American soldier is it's
Yeah, and it's a tough one because it's so emotional for people, and you can't really get to the meat of the discussion because you can't get past the emotional part. And I know for Tanya, this has even hold a little closer spot to her too because of Luke's former profession.
Yes, he is a veteran of Desert Storm, and yeah, his thing is when he talks to people, he's like, well, if you think that this person is the enemy, if you think you have to defend against them, then go ahead and go do it yourself. If you're not willing to do it yourself, then don't praise someone else for doing it. So that's kind of his issue. But it just brings up so much for me because I feel there's this thing that kind of calls itself Christianity in the United States that is really kind of Americanism. It's more of a government worship and more of what I really feel, I would consider biblically to be a false religion. And it's something that there's a lot to it, but it was something I looked at a lot when I started to kind of understand more about libertarian philosophy and those things, and trying to understand, hey, was this right or wrong? Should I buy into this? Is this unbiblical? So I had to ask a lot of questions, and so there's a lot there. I mean, I could talk about that a lot, but this really hits very close to home for me because I kind of came out of that type of thinking.
And I'm a little with Tim. I don't think there's really anything special about the American Sniper other than the fact of the movie, and it's a hot topic right now, than any other player in that whole thing. And again, you don't have to be a grunt. You could be a general. I don't know all the ranks,
Yeah.
right? As long as you're involved in it, it's really the same principles at stake. But the broader thing is that I think people also don't think about is, I think, warfare as we know it, or, our generations, maybe a little before and after me, for sure, it's I would argue is a manifestation of the state itself, right? These wars are states at war with other states. In other words, the people in a big way, they're not, a lot of the people I know, none of them were really at war or had a problem with anybody in Iraq. They didn't even know anybody personally in Iraq, right? It's a dispute amongst states. And again, because this is in the hands of the state, and you can argue about why it's there and how it's gotten there, but that's what made it at such a large scale, because the states, of course, confiscate wealth from so many people. They can now have this whole military-industrial complex behind them, which also, of course, pushes them into war because they want to sell their stuff. And then, I can go on about 800 tangents here, but I think the point is modern warfare is a manifestation of the state, and I don't think we'd even be talking about this really if the state didn't exist.
Well, if they were funded voluntarily, they'd never be able to raise the funds to go to war because I don't think enough people would support it. Unless there was a real threat. If there was a real threat, then people would say, here, I'm going to throw my money at you to defend me. But I don't think that would happen.
Yeah.
So, or at least it would be very rare.
So it's it is a little bit hard for a freedom supporter to have this discussion in a sense, because again, a lot of these whole concepts wouldn't even exist, right? So you're in a goofy concept to argue about this or discuss it when really it shouldn't even be there. Again, it's a little like, and I try to make it as elementary as possible. If you had a policy of do not carry the red wine over the white carpet, right? And then you continue, your kids do it, so just say your kids, and eventually they spill it, and then they ask you, well, what do we do now? And you say, well, really the point is, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I was trying to take preventative measures so we would never
Now
be
you got
here.
a mess, right?
Yeah. How do you clean a mess? That's a whole different ball of worms,
Well, and I struggle, and it's not necessarily within the bounds of this show, but there's a biblical argument against all of this stuff, this sniper theology and everything. But I mean, people, sometimes people react by saying, "Oh, don't," like being really against Christians or against what Christians believe. Well, I guess I would just go on record saying that's not what all Christians believe, and I don't think that is a biblical, biblically supported. So there are differences of opinion on that. And so it's sad to me that, the whole thing is funded by force to begin with, and I don't think there's a very good defense for that being okay. Force people to pay for it.
Cool. Anything else? Because I want
No.
to come to Uncle Ghoulie.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so much easier than typing. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
So we'll do that. So we're basically wrapped for the show, and we're. The one thing I wanted to say that I want now see you guys type so stinking fast. Your comments have that's when we're talking about
I'm not even trying.
surge. Yeah, Tanya can't even really say it. Surge pricing and changing the pricing. The one thing I'd ask is, we're getting back to subjective value theory versus labor value theory, right? And the bottom line is labor value theory is like, it's essentially fixed because anything is just the sum of all the labor that went in. And you say, well, no, use some capital items to, I don't know, make the car, but there's stored up labor in that too, right? So you add up all the labor and that's what the car's worth. And maybe the better example is your home. If you believe in the labor theory, right, your home price is fixed because in 50 years, and you can argue there's a shortage of homes now. You can't charge more for the home, of course, because the labor to create the home never changed, right? If that's what you support. So what I'm saying is, if you're on the side where you shouldn't be able to use surge pricing, you could never charge two different prices for the same basic service, and I would argue it's not the same service. A hot dog at the ballpark is not a hot dog at home. That's why people pay 6 times as much because it's time preference, and you got to learn to understand that. But so you would never be able to sell anything at a profit.
Sometimes things look like they're the same good, but they're not actually the same good. I was having this conversation with Luke, with my husband, about he's a contractor, he's a very skilled carpenter, and sometimes if he's bidding against other contractors, there are times when it's almost a different good. If you have someone who is very skilled and can do very high end work, and when you're bidding against if you are selling oranges and everyone else is selling apples, then it becomes very difficult to set your price in relation to everybody else, because you have to decide, are you selling the same good? Are you trying to compete with price for that same thing? Or are you selling something
as an
entirely different, and you want to kind of market it as something completely different? So we were just talking about that and saying, like, the taxi ride after the big concert lets out maybe is completely different than the one where you're just calling somebody to come pick you up at your hotel.
Time preference means something. And I think...
So even if you have exactly the same,
Yeah.
there's other things that are, implicit in the price that you pay, other than just raw materials and labor. There's location, there's timing, there's the perception of substitutes in the market, or things that you maybe not get the same exact thing you want, but there may be other options available in the market. So all of those factors are created or used to create this price. And so you can have exactly the same good. You can have gasoline in one county from another, and they will be priced different for other reasons rather than just the composition of the gasoline itself.
Right. Absolutely. So with that...
The end of view, everything is what people are willing to pay for. Like, from the other end is what the price is just what the market, what people in the market are willing to offer in exchange for it.
So I got an old car, and you don't really like that model of car, but Tim says that's the cat's meow, man. That's the coolest car ever, and he offers me 5 times as much money as you offer me for the car because you think, hey, it's just a basic car. I don't really care. Am I not supposed to take Tim's offer?
Well, it's like you could go to your grave saying the price of this car is $1,000, but the price of the car is not actually $1,000 if nobody ever comes and pays you that price.
Right.
That isn't it isn't. You will never sell it, so that was not actually... I mean, am I looking at it right?
Yeah.
That wasn't actually the price because nobody's paying that.
The car is valued according to the highest bidder's price.
Yeah.
Right? He sets...
I'm not an economist, and I was dragged kicking and screaming into this whole economics thing, but I think I understand it a little better since learning more about freedom.
Right.
You guys know a lot more about it than me. You can have a better discussion.
Anyway, I apologize for the audio difficulties. I hope I got them straightened out. It again appears that it did, but I'm not on the receiving end, so I can't verify that for sure. But I'd love to have both you back
Yes, Tim, come back.
And we'll do this again, and I'll work on my audio. And I've been saying that for how many years now?
Long time.
Yeah.
So tell me this wasn't the longest show ever.
It was not.
Okay.
But it was one of the longer ones. But it was also one of the better ones,
Always.
other than my audio.
Okay, there's three of us. That's my excuse this time.
So, did either of you have anything, last thing to close or throw? I just want to give it to you before. Yeah, then she dummies up. And then before I wrap the show, and I encourage everyone to check us out next week on the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. Tim, I got to tell you, it's been an absolute pleasure, first of all, to meet you last week and to have you on the show with us. You did this is this like a career you've had for like 15 years? That would.
Yes, awesome. You did awesome. Let's fire us and hire him.
This was great. I look forward to the next opportunity to get on the show with you guys and keep on going.
All right. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate it. And again, I have to thank Tanya. She did a wonderful job. She always brings a cool, an interesting perspective, and it's always a lot of fun.
Yes, it is.
So with that, I'm going to have to close up the show tonight, wrap it up. I would encourage anyone to listen to us next week. We're on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., same thing. And always check out the Facebook page, because there's always stuff flying by on there, some interesting stuff, some just funny stuff. And I like the funny stuff. That everybody deserves a little chuckle now and again. So let me get to my music so I can do this, as poorly as I did the beginning. We'll do this partly professionally. And I'll say goodnight and thanks for listening to the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. And we look forward to having you on, listening with us next week. Good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.